Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Poets and Quants' roundtable discussion from classroom to startup, rethinking the MBA for entrepreneurs. We're joined by Indiana University Kelley Direct, ASU WP Carey, and Rice University Jones. I'm your host, Christy Blyzeffer of Poets and Quants. Please feel free to use the Q&A function to submit the questions you have for our panelists, and I'll do my best to get to those at the end of the session. Let's begin by getting to know our panelists today. If you'll each take a minute to introduce yourselves and your schools and your entrepreneurial resources. And Donald, let's start with you.
Sure. Thank you, Christy. So I'm Dr. Donald F. Karatko. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship. Also, I hold the Jack M. Gill Distinguished Chair of Entrepreneurship here at the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University. Our sort of ecosystem is pretty wide. We have a student incubator on the practice side, the experiential side, very large. We're able to get about 85 student businesses in there each year. On the academic side, obviously, we're talking about the MBA level. We have it at all levels: PhD, MBA, undergraduate, and even cross-campus minor. But at the MBA level, we have a major in entrepreneurship and corporate innovation, and also a minor in entrepreneurship and corporate innovation. So, in a quick nutshell, that's kind of. I'm sure we'll talk more as we go on, but I hope that helps, Christy.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Hidendra.
Yeah, hi, my name is Hitendra Chaturvedi. I am a professor of practice at the W.P. Carey School of Business, and I'm also the faculty director of the master's program in entrepreneurship. I have been an entrepreneur in my past lives. I've been a serial entrepreneur, so I bring in experiences that you don't get in classrooms, the scars on my back and all of that good stuff. We have we have a very strong ecosystem. We have an incubator, WP Carey. We have a ranked program in entrepreneurship innovation. We have been 11 years in a row, #1 in the country. And we'll talk more about how we think about entrepreneurship at WP Carey.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Al.
I'm Al Danta. I'm a senior lecturer in entrepreneurship at the Jones School, Rice University, and we've been teaching entrepreneurship since the early 80s. So I came through in the 90s and actually got my MBA here, and we launched a startup company that we took and we ran with. And since that time, we've built a heck of a program. It's just been passed on from leadership to leadership. And we have our latest crown jewel is the Ion District, which Rice invested in. It's a 16-acre innovation district just south of downtown that we have there. We have the Lilly Entrepreneurship Center, which is kind of the hub of all things entrepreneurial at the Jones School and Rice. It pulls together our Rice undergraduates, Rice masters, PhD alumni. We have a strong alumni program as well, and we just teach a wide variety of classes here in entrepreneurship. We teach framework classes where the students learn the framework, the process, they understand that, and then they move into an e-lab. Where in an e-lab they get support, they get class credit. They can take the pathway to start a company and work on their startup company with support, mentorship, and then access to capital. Or they can choose another path, which we've also taught here since the 80s, which has gotten popular as ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition. But our founders started to teach that program back in the 80s. So we multiple pathways for our students, lots of support, and lots of connections to the resources and outside capital as well when they're ready.
Yeah, I've been hearing so much more about ETA in the last 2 years. It's really booming. And you guys in the 80s, very interesting. Well, thanks all for joining us and taking the time. I know this is a really popular topic for prospective MBAs. So Hidendra, let's start with you. Can you talk a little bit about the role you think an MBA should play in preparing entrepreneurs, and maybe what are an MBA's limitations?
No, great question. So thank you. So in my opinion, and this is how we believe, traditional MBAs were designed to produce operators rather than what I call outlaws. More analysts, less architects. So if you look at many of the founders, right, of the in 90s and whatever, Bloomberg, Gates, Kalanick, Lee, they all quit mid MBA, by the way. They didn't reject actually education. They were rejecting irrelevance. And I think that's a very, very important distinction. They didn't drop out because they became impatient with a two-year MBA. They dropped out because the system was not built for imagination. And so, to answer your question, the biggest limitation of a traditional MBA is not the curriculum, it is actually the culture. So we need to celebrate, which we have celebrated certainty, not uncertainty. But entrepreneurship lives in like chaos, big time. So, so like if we don't teach the beauty of uncertainty, if we keep on teaching the old playbook, we are not going to create entrepreneurs. And even to that angle, and I believe my co-conspirators here will agree, even the traditional faculty need to unlearn and relearn in this new age. If we want MBAs who think differently, we need professors who teach differently, less as a lecturer, more as collaborators. So faculty should be absolutely comfortable saying, I don't know, let's find it together. So that is where the difference is. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah. Are there any examples that you can think of at Kelley that are kind of really delving into this uncertainty?
Yes, as a matter of fact, one of the examples I'll give you is in my class where I teach the MBA students, I have gone out to them and asked them to give examples of failures. Celebrate failure. Most MBA students, failure means, oh my God, that is, it's going to be a mark which says you are nobody if you fail. In my class, I'm teaching them that uncertainty will lead you to failure, but that's a badge of honor because that's a data point. And that is how we teach uncertainty. And in a classroom, standard case studies and all, no, it becomes a lab.
Yeah, that is a hard metric to learn to celebrate failure for sure. Al, how about it, Rice? Or what do you think of the
Yeah,
role of BA?
yeah, I think it's great to hear that from Tender. I guess it's like Entrepreneurs Anonymous, right? We're together in this, and you say that yeah, teaching, a very rigid analytical entrepreneur that, hey, it's okay to fail. It's okay to not have the answers. It's okay to go out there and figure it out. It's a challenge. It really is a hard challenge to do that. It's hard to tell somebody it's okay to go out there and fail and learn. But, what we try to do is give the students, a framework and a process to move forward, to manage risk and manage uncertainty and take, instead of making this risky leap, which a lot of people think they're going to make this risky leap, is to break it down into manageable steps and iterations, right? Where you can take a step and test and move to the next one very inexpensively, and you can afford to fail and try something different. So that mindset is important to teach. We're not trying to teach in a textbook or with PowerPoints. I think that's a myth. But I think what we try to do is give students a safe environment where they can test their ideas, get feedback, make mistakes, and ultimately build relationships that they're going to have for a lifetime. And I think this fertile ground that we can plant these seeds in gives our entrepreneurs, a higher probability of succeeding and moving forward. And if they don't make it, they've learned and they go on to the next one. And many of our successes come in a third or fourth attempt that we see, right?
Absolutely. Donald, how about it, Kelley?
Yeah, so I think Hitendra and Al have covered the ground pretty good there. I would agree with everything they've said. I think I was just going to say we try to build some foundations, kind of what Al was getting at with frameworks and processes. I've often said, I think the problem, I've been in this for 40 years, so I've seen a lot over the 4 decades. And I think everybody wants to sort of get to the practice of entrepreneurship, but I always preach them, it's really about theory, then process, then practice. So you build a foundation first, kind of what Al said. You got to have something so they understand when they get into the, as Hitendra said about uncertainty and stuff. When they get in that, do they have something to grasp and start to work with? I think that's extremely important. So I've always believed in the theory, process, practice, because I think theory's build the processes. Processes lead you to the practice. And then in practices, as Hitendra said, there's still a lot of uncertainty and a lot of other things that go on there as well, without question. But that's kind of how we approach it. We do a lot of things that everyone else said. We've got, as I mentioned earlier, the incubator. I'm a real believer in what I call dual progression curriculum, where you progress through, as I mentioned, sort of the foundational academic side, but you have to have the practice side, experiential, to be experiencing these things that Hitendra and Al were both pointing out. So yes, I agree with exactly kind of where they fall on this too.
Kelley, just one small example, and that
Please.
will tell you my age in a way. In the 1980s, mid 1980s, there was an ad that came out, Apple ad that went viral, IBM, against IBM. So if you were to visualize that ad, we have been preparing MBAs for that. If you see that ad, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But we need to change that. That's a fundamental thing we need to change.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Good discussion. Al, we're going to go to you for the next round. What entrepreneur, I'm going to have trouble saying this word throughout this.
Tough word, yeah.
So, what entrepreneurial mindsets or skills do you believe are the most important today, and how do you help students develop them at Rice?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kristen. I think it's very foundational because I think if you can have this mindset, it can carry you forward not only in entrepreneurship but other things that you face, right? And I think if you think about these things, um, curiosity is there. I think with curiosity, that's going to keep you looking and keep you looking ahead, and seeing these changes, AI and everything that's coming on, innovations, new possibilities. So I'd say curiosity, scrappiness. You have to be scrappy. You just have to get out there, and you have to be scrappy, pull up your boots, get out there and figure stuff out. You have to be resourceful. If you're stepping out of a corporate environment and you're coming into an entrepreneurial environment, you're not going to have the resources that you have in a big corporation. If you're going to hire somebody, you have to hire them yourself. Janitor, you have to figure out how you get the office clean. Everything, you have to be resourceful. But I think a really big one is humility and being coachable. I think you have to be coachable. You have to listen. And quite honestly, sometimes you have to leave your MBA at the door and say, I can't, I'm going to have to just be humble, coachable, and figure this stuff out. I'm not going to have all the answers. So, to me, I think those four things are great traits that we want to see.
Are those teachable, like being agile or, scrappy? Are those skills that you can learn in a program, or how do you guys kind of practice those at Rice?
What we do, we certainly, like Donald said, we teach I hate to say theory, we teach the framework, right? You have to be scrappy. Well, what's being scrappy? Well, here's an example. Here's how some of our alums have done it. They come in the classroom, they tell them, they talk. We have about 200 of our alumni that are in roundtables where they meet in groups of 8 to 10 on a monthly basis, and they support each other, they help each other. Because entrepreneurship's a lonely journey, right? So you want to be connected, kind of back to the mothership, which is Rice, but we have, roundtables. So they see each other and they learn from each other, and they understand it. And you reinforce that and you try to show examples, right? And you see that and you point that out, right? So you have to, some can change and adapt a little easier. Some are natural, and some maybe they're not going to pick up a part of that, but you
Yeah.
certainly try, right?
Yeah. I think having the alumni kind of example is like when you said like the lonely journey, that's like such a good, like kind of role model example.
We have
Don,
ongoing events through our Lilly Center too, which we'll bring in. We'll talk about that.
great, great. Donald,
Mhm.
what are those skills that you think, and how do you maybe engage with those at Kelley?
Right. I think, well, Al had some good points there. I think I always talk about our mindset being one that a dynamic process of vision, change, and creation, but also having the passion and the energy to create something new or solve some with creative solutions and stuff. So to do all that, again, based on the frameworks we talked about, but having students experience some of these things, that's why the experiential side is so critical. So they get to delve into that. We also, I think Hitendra mentioned about failure and the view of that. We created a course. I call it my Silicon Valley Venture Challenge, and we have my MBAs who are really interested in developing, business. develop sort of their business plan, their pitch deck, everything. And then they have to fly to Silicon Valley. And I've got a partnership with Plug and Play out there in Sunnyvale, California. We take them to that place. I've got a 22-member advisory board in Silicon Valley. They all come in. We separate them into rooms, and the MBAs present their plans and take questions. And the panelists decide their final grade for the course. If they fail, they don't graduate. And so I want to force them into an academic situation where they confront failure, the potential of failure, and how to overcome that. And I think that's really really important when I tend to talk about failure and how we look at it, and how I think you have to experience it in some ways. And so that's kind of one of the things we've tried to do to really bring a lifetime experience to them.
Absolutely. And Hydendra.
I'm just going to agree first to everything. And I do the same thing, Donald. I do the same thing, Shark Tank style pitching and extreme hard questions, teaching them that basically what you're doing is success is never final, but failure is never fatal. So I think which becomes very important. Just to adding to what Al was talking about, a few things that are we add on to that is and I was taking notes, adaptability. And we push them into live experiments. Go in the field. If you want to do a customer discovery, go talk to a real customer. That is the hardest part for these students. And that just messy uncertainty that happens. And rather than bringing in case studies, we bring in a lot of guest speakers. We have 150 strong Dean's Council that we bring in for help. But we want the students to become case studies. Rather than teaching case studies. So where we are slightly different is we look at entrepreneur in 3 different ways. And this is important. One is the builder mindset. This is the standard entrepreneur. Let's have an idea, see opportunities where others see constraint. But many of the folks don't realize that over the next 5 years, anywhere between $5 to $10 trillion worth of small businesses are going to be coming up for sale because the baby boomers are retiring. And so we are now teaching our students who are amazing operators, because we teach them like that, to look at buying a business. If you look at America, if you look at extremely wealthy people, they're in the $250 to $500 million net worth range. They all started by buying a business. So we teach them that. And then the third thing we teach is what we call the entrepreneurial mindset. When you go work for a Fortune 100 company, a 500 company, how do you bring in a guerrilla warfare mentality rather than being part of this big, huge engine? Be an innovator there. And there are many instances where an entrepreneur has become an entrepreneur and then come back and become an entrepreneur and becoming a billionaire just through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people hear entrepreneur and think startup, and you can do that in so many different roles and even in and out of your kind of professional life. Absolutely. Well, Donald, thinking about kind of how you guys, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. I thought someone wanted to jump in there. Thinking about it, Kelley, and how your professors are kind of balancing teaching the lean, agile startup principles within that really structured nature of the MBA we kind of think of. What are you seeing at Kelley on how that's balanced out?
Yeah, great, Christy. The lean startup methodology is really important. It's used in so many ways. We even have a course in venture models where we tell the MBAs they've got to kind of create an idea, and then they've got to go out and test it with potential customers. Kind of like Hydendra was saying about customer discovery. Get out there and get your feet wet and see what this is like, and bring back what did you find out? What evidence would that make you pivot your idea to something else? Is the customer telling you something that you didn't think of because you were so in love with the idea? And that's really important to us. And I think that you have to do that. Because if you're not doing that, you're just sort of chasing a pipe dream that you believe in your own head. And again, we even meet with our students, and as Al and Hydendra were saying, we've got our alums come back, same kind of thing. They sit down, they do a lot of mentoring. We have to do a lot of mentoring, which we think is extremely important. But as part of that, even those alums come back and talk about the power of the lean startup and how important that is to get that minimal viable product before you start designing something huge.
Yeah.
I mean, just minimal viable product, get it out there, test it a little bit, get some feedback. How would you pivot? That's all. We've worked that into the curriculum. We just think it's that important.
Yeah, yeah. Hydendra, talk about this balance at ACU Carry and examples that you see.
But actually, let me be frank about it, that we don't balance them at all. We
Got,
actually blend it.
got.
So blend it into the DNA of the MBA program. What I mean by that is I'm a very firm believer that the lean, agile mindset, it shouldn't live in a separate entrepreneurial course. And it should basically run through the bloodstream of whatever we are teaching to the entire MBA program. And why I say that, so I'll give you an example. So when we are teaching negotiations, we don't simulate a negotiation or a merger between two Fortune 100 companies. We will bring in and we'll negotiate a term between a founder and a VC. If you're teaching supply chain, we will not teach the supply chain of how modern Amazon warehouse works, but we are going to design a supply chain for a 5-person startup that has to source products from China with no cash and no cushion. So that's where the fun starts to happen. So every course is becoming more like a startup lab. And then to Don's point and Al, we also bring in founders who not only bring in their success story, but their bruises.
Yeah.
And at the end of the goal, at the end of the MBA program, the way we think about it is we should stop asking, what is the right answer? And start asking, what should I test next? What do I break next? So this is how we are actually embedding everything into our DNA.
Oh, very interesting. Al, how about at Rice?
Yeah, I think it Rice. I think we've been really fortunate, right? We started back in the 1980s, and we really had two PhDs who were at heart entrepreneurs, Ed Williams and Al Napier. And Al Napier had his own companies that he started and he ran. And Ed Williams actually was one of the founders of SCI, which is now publicly traded and the largest kind of death care. And it was started off of his theory of acquiring small companies and rolling them together. So since the 80s, we've taught get out there and start a company. If you want to go into the landscape business, you can start a company, you can start it up, or you can go acquire a company. These were the two pathways. So it's always been in our DNA. And the class that they taught in the 80s and 90s, and I've continued it, and we've just grown now to hundreds of students that take it instead of a couple handfuls off to the side like pirates out there that were, kind of figuring this stuff out. Is to really within the class, you have to get right out there and start. You have to talk to customers. You have to try to prove your concepts and not just write a hypothetical business plan, that's 40 pages thick and you think you have all the answers. So it's kind of been we've been fortunate. It's been in our DNA since day one. And I don't think that's ever changed that here's kind of a framework and a process. Here's some examples. Now go out there and let's do it. Let's come back in the classroom and let's talk about it. And we've just with that have launched, just thousands of companies now until now. So it's been on our day, I think, since day one, and our leadership's always continuing with that to stay there. Without the proper leadership from the top, and the belief, hey, we're going to start things, not everything works out. We're not going to have that in your DNA. So it starts from the top. The president, Dean Rodriguez, Peter Rodriguez, has just continued that, and we just continue to grow and build on what we started, over 40 years ago now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Hydendra, can you talk a little bit about how the Carry program has evolved and is evolving to meet, the needs of founders in things like AI, sustainability, economy, some of those emerging topics?
Yeah, that's a very interesting topic. I'll cover both of them separately. With AI, we are basically telling them use it, be aggressive, use it, but use it intelligently. Okay, and we want our co-founders, and Al brought up a very good point that founders it's a very lonely place. We are saying make AI your co-founder. Okay, make AI your co-founder because if you're thinking about it, why this is important is if you look at the venture capital industry today, if you look at their funding model today, most of the venture capitalists are already negotiating with founders that you don't need Traditionally, if you needed 30 people and that's the money you're asking for, they're saying you can only do it with 5.
Right.
So if VCs are thinking like that, then if we tell our students not to use AI, that's foolish in my opinion. So we are asking them to become literally use AI. So in our program, in every case, from ideation to finance to supply chain, we are actually integrating AI as part of the entire workflow. So they're using AI to not only ideate, but to forecast, but to pitch, prototype, all of these things. We are allowing them to use it. We are giving them tools to use it on. So what's happening is that the decisions that used to take months and months are now within an hour. And that's the beauty of it. And then we are having VCs come into our classroom and say, pitch. If they've agreed to put money into your startup, you get an A grade. So that's the on sustainability. Short line on this one. We are done treating sustainability as a side conversation. Just like AI, how we are integrating it, every business idea, whether it's fintech or fashion, must now pass through what we call the planet test. So they're learning to integrate circular design, regenerative models, and so on and so forth, responsible design whenever they're doing startups. So that's where the fun is happening. And interestingly, Arizona as an ecosystem, I joke about it a little bit. I rub Silicon Valley the wrong way. I said Silicon Valley, they shouldn't be called Silicon Valley. There is no silicon there. All the silicon is here in Arizona. So we are the real Silicon Valley, and with the hardware and the software combination, what I call container and content merger, this ecosystem is just blowing up with opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Al, how about at Rice? Same question.
Yeah, I've never seen anything move so quickly, and I think I got an inside look as to why when I sat in a board meeting and everyone went around and talked about how they were using AI, and the chief technology officer for one of our alumni companies said, "This is how we program now." And one agent programmed, the other agent reviewed it, went back and forth. He said, "No, picture this used to be 2 programmers going back and forth." And I said, "Wow, I get it." So as we build these agents out, and agents can review and do stuff like Katendra said to review pitch decks and review ideas and feedback and everything. It's just amazing how this is moving. So we already have a class on AI that most of our students are taking. It's taught by a AI startup founder who's already on her second AI company, and so we're just looking for every possible way that we can integrate it into our classes and our programs, and it's just incredible. I think as a general rule, we just tell our students to always keep an eye on the new frontiers. What's coming up? What's coming ahead? What do you see? Where are we going to be? I play hockey. I'm from Michigan. I played ice hockey for 50 years, right? So Wayne Gretzky said, "Where's the puck going?" And it's you have to see that. And we've already had ideas that have come out on AI that have been scrapped because they got passed so quickly, right?
Right.
So it was cool 2 months ago. Is not it's history now, right? It's not even
Yeah,
a viable business opportunity because it changed so quick. So you have to see where it's going. So
yeah,
always have to keep an
absolutely.
eye on that.
Donald, what about at Kelley?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. We've integrated AI into almost everything. We're encouraging the students to use it. Faculty are using it. It's here to stay. Let's be honest. I agree with Al. It has come really fast. It's like sprinting by us. I do try to explain to the students that reminds me of the when the internet was coming on in the late '90s and stuff. Everybody was enamored with it. Remember, all the .coms got started, and because everybody was so enamored with the thing. And then we found out when the .com crashed happened in 2000, we started to realize, well, wait a minute, it's a tool. Let's use it as a
Exactly.
tool. So
Exactly.
I think that's kind of where we're at now because everybody's infatuated with AI. The VCs are all running to fund it and stuff. But right now, I think it's more of an infatuation. I think we're going to learn how to, as Itender was saying and Al was saying, we're going to learn to teach them to use as a tool, and that's how it's going to be valuable. So, yeah, we have to integrate to everything. There's no question about it. I also want to impress on the students about hallucination because
Yeah,
AI is really good at that too. And I
yeah,
want the students to understand the difference. I think that's critically important. But everything else that Hitendra and Al said was great. I agree 100%.
Yeah. What about sustainability? Do
Yeah,
you
I
have?
agree with what Hitendra said about it's got to be integrated into everything now. I think we have to stop treating it as something separate out there. It's just we talk a lot about the ethical side of entrepreneurship, and what does that mean? Like Hitendra said about the planet. I think that's really good. We talk about people, planets, profits. How does this all work? We talk about a lot of things like blitz scaling. What is that, and where could that lead you? Do you understand where can you manage that, or is it going to take you somewhere like it took Elizabeth Holmes with Theranos, or it took Sam Bankman-Fried, with with FTX? We try to show them those extremes to say, be careful now. Understand what you're doing and what are you trying to accomplish. Are you just chasing money, or are you doing something for the good of the economy, and the planet? I love Hitendra saying that about the planet. I think that was fantastic. So yeah, we try to integrate that into everything, Christy.
Absolutely. Great. Well, Al, for our next question, it actually kind of aligns pretty good with a Q&A we got from a viewer, so I'll combine the two. Talk about how you encourage risk-taking and help students become more comfortable with the possibility of failure at Rice. And then, the viewer wants to know what are kind of the optimal, measurable learning goals for an MBA in entrepreneurship. How is success demonstrated if failures are expected? It's an MBA wants to know, what are the metrics I need to meet? So,
Yeah, maybe I'll go from the last first. I think certainly if you learn from your mistakes, it's a win, right? If you learn, it'll make you better the next time. Like I said, some of our most successful alumni entrepreneurs have failed 2 and 3 times, but they've learned. The smartest I ever thought I was when I was 25. The dumbest I ever feel is, I'm 64. That's so you learn along the way, right? And I think it's important to realize that you're learning. I think Attender Don said, it's not fatal if you fail. So you need to learn from that. But we start out by saying, look, you have to accept the worst case. And entrepreneurship is not for everybody. It really isn't. And you have to take a look at that. And you have to believe it and you have to understand it. So, one of our alums, Omer Tarek, who's a speaker in my class, he was a founder of Cart.com, which hit $1 billion valuation in less than 2 years. And he became one of Texas's youngest unicorns, right? They have $1 billion valuation. And he said when he told his wife he's going for this, he said they can't take our house in Texas. They can't take our 401k. I have a Rice MBA and I'll go back to work. And he said, I've understood the worst case, right? And again, I don't think entrepreneurship is about taking wild risks. It's about designating smart experiments, taking it step by step, iterating along the way and learning and giving ourselves a chance to succeed as you get out there. And you have to understand that going into it. I also think one thing, there's a difference between fear and risk. Entrepreneurs are they're great mitigators of risk. They understand risk. So statistically, bungee cord jumping is safer than getting up and going to work every day. Only 4 points. But so you have to look at the facts and the factual, and don't let the emotion, fear, drive the objectivity, which is understanding risk and how you can mitigate it and know it. So I think there's a difference between fear and risk. Right?
Donald, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I agree with Al. I think I try to have the students understand that the idea of failure, the fear part, it's a perceptual thing.
Yeah.
So they perceive what might happen if it fails, and they start thinking of all these negative outcomes. And it's like, well, that really isn't reality, as Al was pointing out. Let's look at the facts of, what can happen here and stuff. So, and the other thing we try to stress also is the dark side of entrepreneurship. We try to talk a lot about the stress that's involved in actually starting a firm. It isn't all, they get enamored with all these unicorn stories. They love that. And then they're all sitting there going, oh, I'll have the next unicorn. Well, might be a long journey before you get there. So we want them to understand that. I brought back one of my MBA grads from way back in 2012, who had a very successful startup, sold it for millions and millions and millions of dollars, and then went into a state of depression, had to be hospitalized. So I brought him back to the classroom, and he really bared his soul and told exactly what he went through. And the business just sort of, he put his whole life soul into it, and then it really took them into a state of depression in many ways. So I'm not saying that happens to everybody. We're not trying to scare the students. We just want them to understand some of the realities, because that also helps dispel some of the fears of failure, because now they're getting the image of what could happen, but how do I mitigate that? How do I avoid that? And this student who came back, this alum came back and said, here's what I would do differently. Here's exactly what I would do differently now looking back. And I thought that was really a tremendous lesson that he gave the students. So I think that's all stuff we try to do to help them to understand how to mitigate failure, how to plan around that, and plan ahead for what the real possibilities are.
Yeah, absolutely. Hydendra, anything about encourage risk taking while teaching to be more comfortable with risk or failure?
Yeah, no, I think the personal side of it, what Don said, is very, very important. And that's something we particularly integrate in every class, talking about, are you the right person? Entrepreneurship is supposedly very sexy. That's the reason we say there are two other paths of entrepreneurship. And this dichotomy between rich and king is so important that we teach in the classroom. So as I mentioned, I've been a serial entrepreneur. So for me, the first time I failed, I was depressed for many days. Most entrepreneurs are type A personalities. They don't like to say no. So now what I'm doing is, but that risk taught me so much, so much. So in the classroom, every student runs an experiment that I know will fail. I know it. And so it could be a standard $5 challenge that most, or an impossible startup, or a pitch that is designed to be rejected. And when it fails, which it always does, then we unpack the feelings for the lesson. The first time, if it's a public failure, their ego takes a hit. I'm literally telling you that's what happened. Second time, they start laughing. By the third, by the third time, they're actually asking better question. And I guess that's the point, is not to erase the sting, but make it so useful. And to that end, one of the things that I've done in my classroom is I have changed the dictionary by reframing certain words. So a failed idea is now called a completed iteration. A mistake becomes a data point, and rejection becomes a response signal. We are also thinking about, we also have a glorious wall of failure where students will post their failures and what they have learned. I guess the most important thing in the failure part is that opposite of success isn't failure. And I think that's where the message is. It is inaction. Once we teach the MBAs to see failure as a feedback to build on, that's where you open up entrepreneurship.
Oh, absolutely. I actually have a question directed to you, specifically, Hydendra, from our viewers. And it is there a model which shows how to successfully support faculty in unlearning certainty versus uncertainty, and faculty learning how to embrace of the embrace of chaos?
It's easier to teach students about uncertainty than it is about faculty. Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring this up is because imagine, when do you take risk and you're open to uncertainty? When you don't have a lot invested in your life. I call it the baggage. Most of the faculty who are teaching the course have so much baggage with them, and in a nice way, I'm not dissing them, that it becomes hard for them to change. And so, to answer your question, it is a very tough task within universities to have traditional faculty start thinking with an entrepreneurial mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So that battle, I don't think so we have won yet. And with I wouldn't call AI as a tool. I'm doing a research where some of the research data coming back, AI is becoming more of a presence at a feedback loop in organization than a tool. But with AI coming in, it'll be interesting to see how the faculty who teach entrepreneurship will change.
Yeah, absolutely. The entrepreneurial depression has actually become quite a topic on our discussion board. So Donald, I want to maybe direct this to you, since you brought it up. It the commenter says, as an entrepreneur, it is almost certain you might have to face your limitations. Reaching a plateau is also a good source of depression. How do you teach prospective MBA entrepreneurs to push past their limits? What are some of the things that you help with them when you kind of see them hitting that plateau?
So I think there's a couple things here that are going on. One is the um, how are they going to handle things? What are they changing in their daily routines? So, for example, if they like to work out, or they like to ride their bike, or they like to, if they start to pursue this idea, are they giving all that up because now they have this mindset they're supposed to be all in on the venture? I got to be all in. Well, that's all great, but the problem is now you're leaving so much to the side that that may hurt you lifestyle wise, as far as putting you in a depression you shouldn't be in. It isn't a plateau then. It's sort of a hole you're falling into. So I think we try to discuss that with them and talk about those things so that they are aware that there are certain lifestyle things you need to keep doing, because you need to take breaks away from the venture. You need to, refresh yourself. That's the only way your energy level is going to keep going. So every time they say, I want to be a dedicated entrepreneur where I'm going to just give the venture everything, well, that's all well and good. But if you're not recharging yourself, you're not helping the venture, you're not helping yourself. And I think that's what we try to get across to them, as I think that's extraordinarily important. So even in our incubator and stuff, if we see students in there, they're working night and day, it's kind of like, hey, time to take a break. You got to go do something else, and get a little bit of a life, because I think that's really important. And that was a lesson we learned from that alum I told you we brought back. When I said there were things he would change, those are some things he brought up. He said, I gave up my working out. I gave up this. He was telling all the things he gave up because he thought he was being so dedicated. And instead he was driving himself, right into a hole. So I think that's really important that
Yeah.
students understand that.
Christy, let me try to add something to it. I think this is
Sure.
a very important question, and um, it is very important for entrepreneurs. You should know, and the reality is 50% after the Series A round, if you look at venture Silicon Valley, the old Silicon Valley, 50% of the founders will be removed from the CEO position.
Mhm.
So if you are not mentally prepared for that, it becomes hard, because you have to realize that as a company grows bigger, you may not be suited to run a large company. You may be a great chief technology officer. So most of them, and that's a reality of life. That's the reason I bring this example of rich versus king. You don't have to start a company. If you want to be an entrepreneur, go buy a company and become a billionaire. It's so easy to do. So yes, you have to internally think about how strong you are. What type of person are you? You want more control, or do you want to make a lot of money, or both? And that should drive your path in the entrepreneurship realm.
Yeah, interesting. Al, anything to add on this?
Yeah, I've got a little bit to add that I think too. Also, the DNA of the person that starts the company and drives and gets it going takes it to a point. But ultimately, you have to learn to delegate. And I think ultimately you have to go from being a one person band to being the orchestra leader, right? And so, okay, I'm going to oversee marketing and I'm going to see finance and accounting and everything, but I have to be able to turn into a kind of the orchestra leader, and I have to learn to delegate, and I have to learn to get people around me that are probably smarter than me in these areas, and that's where you see that transition. It's not in everyone's DNA, right? So you can start to get to a point, and then you go and you start again. You have to understand that and understand yourself. These operating systems like EOS, familiar, the frameworks for running a growing company, they're really good at having a coach and being able to know that you don't have to have all the answers, and you can delegate, and that can be really challenging for the entrepreneur, right? That
Yeah,
starts it for that control.
yeah,
I,
absolutely.
Christy, if I could also add to that, what Al was saying, the importance of building a team. And
Yeah.
we try to get students to understand that it's, the day of the lone entrepreneur sitting in a garage eating ramen noodles is sort of over. Okay, so now it's a team sport, and so it's important the team you build around you who have the skills you don't have. As you know, Al said, they're smarter than you. You build this team, and I think that also helps this idea of avoiding some of the depression, some of the loneliness. I think that's extraordinarily important too.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
spend a lot of time on that and balancing out the teamwork. So you have someone has the analytical financial discipline with the creativity, the innovation, and you have to have that balance amongst the team, right? And it's really important.
Right, absolutely. Well, one more comment before we go to our last question from one of our viewers. And he says, in strategy courses, we teach the difference between leaders and managers. I think entrepreneurs is the third path we should cover. Interesting perspective that I wanted to add to there. So, Donald, going back to you, for our last question, are there any changes that you're predicting or watching in the next several years about how entrepreneurship is taught in the MBA?
Two things I would add. Hitendra referred to this a little bit earlier when he mentioned about intrapreneurship. I think our major is entrepreneurship and corporate innovation, because I think the corporate innovative side of things is going to become more and more and more important. Organizations realize now in this world of disruptive innovation, if they don't innovate from within, I mean, they're going to die. And so I think there's a sense of they want to breed more of the entrepreneurial mindset in their companies. So a lot of MBAs who may not be cut out for startup type entrepreneurship, the idea of a corporate innovator or an entrepreneur might be very appealing to them. So they can get into an organization and be on a ventures team, or get into corporate venture capital in some of these companies. So I think there's other avenues we're going to see being pushed a lot harder. And in the past, it's all been about startup. We're going to start. We're going to be unicorns. And I think the future, we're going to start drifting more toward sort of this innovative mindset that can be applied in other areas. And then the second thing that we've all talked about today is AI. AI is going to, we're not sure where it's all going to go, but it's going to make a dramatic difference in the way we're teaching. It already is, but I think it's going to make an even a greater difference as in the years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Dendra.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time when you pontificate, right? You look at your crystal ball and you say what's going to happen. In my opinion, and I think over the next decade, 5 to 10 years, I hope it happens faster. We will not just teach entrepreneurship, we are going to teach like entrepreneurs. And I think that's a very fine distinction there. So the traditional MBA model of predictable semesters and perfect case study is going to become extinct. I believe it's going to go out of the window. In the future, the programs will operate more like a startup accelerator for MBA students. So this is where I bring in the idea. These days, wars are fought more with guerrilla warfare. AI is a co-pilot, not the Second World War type of war. That's happening in corporate world today. So with small, fast, tech-infused, AI-infused, but gloriously messy. And that is where the learning is going to happen. So classrooms will look less like lecture hall, more like live labs that we'll be experimenting. We'll be testing ideas in real markets, working with AI and technology, and the measurement will be in learning, not in grades. I think grade is something we need to just get rid of it. So this whole myth of the lone founder, will get away from that. And so the next generation of MBAs with the entrepreneurial mindset, in my opinion, will be building ecosystems, not empires. I think that model is also going to become extinct. I hope they build ecosystems.
Yeah.
So, which means collaborating across disciplines, across borders, and with intelligent systems as teammates. So, in this, my last sentence here is risk will become not something to be afraid of, but something to dance with. And I think that's where the MBA programs are going to change profoundly.
I'll add here.
Yeah, I think if I tried to give you that answer, I'd be violating, all of our lessons, everything we say, because we value learning over predictions, right? So, we always need to be curious, like I said, and continuously evolving as these new technologies emerge. And then we have to change this as quickly, right? So I never could have imagined I think a year ago, 2 years ago, where it's at right now. So as we see these things that are changing, we just have to be ready to adapt. We have to be ready to move forward, and we have to be able to step into our classrooms and give arm our students with the skill sets and lessons that they can go out there and get in the world, right, and take these ideas, solve these problems, and move forward. Because at the end of the day, entrepreneurs improve the lives of their customers, and they make it better. I don't think that will ever change. We just have to see what kind of tools we can do and frameworks to move forward with it. And that's where the curiosity comes in, right? And adaptability.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all very much for joining us and your time. I know it's limited. And of course, thanks for our viewers and all of the great questions that we got to really engage in the conversation. Be sure to check out Poets and Quants' ranking of the best MBA programs for entrepreneurship in 2026, which just came out this week, and you'll find it in our rankings tab at poetsandquants.com. You can also see other entrepreneurship discussions like this on our YouTube page, and in-depth school profiles and entrepreneurship deep dives on our websites. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.